I was working at the movie theater. I started $4.95 as a 16 and a half year old. After 13 years, I was making $17. When I started pursuing my electronic degree, I'm making $20 an hour with less responsibility, where in the movie theater I was salary, managing, payroll, employees and customers and clients, where this was just the technician. You go to a house or a business and you connect the internet, connect them to fiber optic and things like that, and you go home. I was just blown away that what have I done the past 13 years? Why wasn't I working this kind of job? Or I didn't even know you can make $20 an hour. But as I was working, my real estate portfolio was still at that one property. And during that time, I met my wife. She lived in Georgia. I lived in Seattle. I wanted her to come to the Seattle, and she wants to stay in Atlanta. It took us a while to kind of figure that out. My goal was to have her come, remodel the house I have everybody move out, expand the house, add second story to it or third story, whatever it was. And then she came from Atlanta. Atlanta in 2009 or whatever it was, houses were dirt cheap. You can buy a house that's 3, 4, 5,000 square foot with the big land for $250, $300. And when I met her to go to Atlanta and seeing this mansion houses dirt cheap, my heart was like almost wanted to move. But then a lot of my, some of my family was here, so I decided to stay. So when she saw the house first time and knew it was this 1940 house, I think it was like 1,400 square foot, I'm renovating, remodeling, and telling her how I'm going to expand it. And that was a no for her because she was like, I'm not raising my kids in an old house where it has to be renovated. And I didn't think about school districts back then because I didn't have any kids. But then that's when kind of life starts for everybody. Usually you meet someone, your thoughts are different, you start thinking about different things. So she kind of pushed and was like, hey, I moved there, we need to buy a house. That is something that I can raise our kids. So as I'm working at this communication company, we got married, had an amazing ceremony in Atlanta. And right before she moved, I actually rented the basement out. So now, little story on that house, all 3 bedrooms are rented up there. The basement is rented, covering my mortgage, and I'm getting good cash flow off of it. Again, I'm not processing that whole aspect of the real estate, what I'm doing and what's happening. I'm just doing it as life is going on. Using that extra cash flow, I'm not saving it. I use it as personal use. But when my wife came, I always thank her for that. It actually pushed me to go a different route versus what I had thought about, which is expanding the house. So we rented an apartment in North Seattle area, Northgate. So I was working the communication company. I'm driving around doing my job, and I saw a specific new construction going up. And my mind has always been buying a house, fixing it up, because that's what I saw with my friend. Buys houses, she fixes it, she rents it. I never thought about buying a new construction, but as I was driving, I had my orange vest on, my orange hat, and I had my company vehicle, and I literally drove into that development and start walking around. And I hear nails popping and drywalls, the smell of paint. And it's like, oh, they're building a house here. This is a nice neighborhood. I knew about that. One of the movie theaters that I managed was in Linwood at that time, the Alderwood Theater. And I knew about the neighborhood. But then I saw the price, and the price was for $230,000, $240,000. And brand new construction. Can't believe it now, but I wish I would have bought like 4 of them at that time. And if I know what I know now, I would have bought 4 of them for sure. I talked to my wife when I got home, and I went to the agent back at that development community. I asked them to give me, they were building 19 homes, and they were just, some of them, the foundation was being built, some of them was on, up to the drywall, but nothing has been purchased at that time. They haven't released it. And, what it was, that builder had bought that land, I don't know, it was for $600,000 back then. And the market tanked, so they held on it long as they can. Then they decided to just build and sell it. That's why the price was so low. When I talked to my wife, we're living in an apartment, working my communication job. It was time for us to buy. And I reached out to my agent again, this amazing agent. She's still my mentor. I told her about, we're looking to buy a house. For some reason, after we looked at that property, I saw another property that was, I remember back then, it was like another big development for $370,000, and I got approved. And being a great agent that she was, an amazing agent, he looked at the monthly payment and he's like, yes, you're approved for this, but are you sure you can sustain this monthly payment? But I was all about like working overtime, I can make it happen. And she's like, no. It's like, you need to find a property that you really could afford, that way, wife start working, you guys have a baby, and could afford it as a solo by myself. Not happy again. And I was like, okay. Then that property kept coming back for 230 or 240,000 it was. So I went back home, had the printout of all the units, and I went back and forth with those homes to pick the right lot. Ended up, picking lot 3 because lot 3, the background was wetland, and hopefully nobody builds back there. And in front of it was another wetland. That gives us, these developments, sometimes when you build them, they build them so close to each other that you don't have enough space. But it had just enough yard. It has a basement. It was 3 levels, a basement, a main level, and an upstairs. Really, when you added it up, it was like right now it's 2,800 square foot. So I reached out to my agent. I said, hey, can you help me make an offer on this? We ended up making an offer. The builder built it, finished it, and we moved out of our apartment. At that time, my wife was pregnant with my first kid, Noah. She actually had the baby while we were living in an apartment. And then 3 months later, the house was completed. We moved into the house, just like an exciting time. A first official home, with my wife and our first son, super excited. And it was new construction, so no remodeling, which is, I always thank her for that because my mentality is always fixing stuff. And this one, just move in ready. Great community, and my work was easier because most of my job was near that location. So we were living great, that first year. While we were happy, we moved into a house working for this communication company. Because we're union, the benefits were super amazing. We barely pay $150 a month for health insurance, and when she had her baby, it was almost free, because it had an amazing benefit. Things happen for a reason sometime, and what happened for us was right in November, and I worked the same company for so many years. I didn't know companies lay people off. I didn't even know what a layoff or pink slip was. Right in November, 2 weeks from Thanksgiving, my manager called me and they were like, hey, end of the year, we got to lay some people off because, financially the company's not doing that well. And when you work for a union company, they go by seniority.